Alice Morgan stood silently by the graveside in the misty Lake District. The cold breeze whispered through the ancient trees, carrying memories of James, her husband. The service was over, but the emptiness inside her heart had just begun. She looked down at the freshly turned earth and felt the weight of a life abruptly ended. James had been her rock, her partner in every sense. Yet now, he was gone. As the last of the mourners left, Alice noticed a small envelope tucked beneath a stone near the grave. Her name was written in James's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, not a usual farewell, but a puzzle. James wrote of a secret, a hidden treasure within the Lake District, something that could change her life forever. The letter ended with a single line, "Find it, and you will find peace." Alice's mind raced. Was this a final game, or a desperate plea? She folded the letter carefully and whispered a promise to herself: she would find out the truth. The following morning, Alice sat at the kitchen table, the letter from James carefully spread out before her. The soft light of dawn seeped through the window, casting a pale glow on the worn handwriting. Each word felt heavier than the last, as if James had anticipated that she would be lost without him and left her one final riddle to solve. The letter described a journey, a trail of clues scattered across the Lake District, each leading closer to the secret James had guarded all his life. It was not about money or jewels, but something far more valuable, something only someone who truly knew him could understand. Alice felt a mix of confusion and determination. Why had James never spoken of this before? Why now, at the end? Her mind replayed memories of quiet walks, conversations filled with laughter and occasional silences, moments that now seemed charged with hidden meaning. She recalled one particular afternoon, months ago, when James had stopped by a small, weathered bench overlooking a lake. He'd been unusually quiet and handed her a small wooden box, locked tight. "This is for when you're ready," he had said softly. Alice never asked what was inside. Now, with the letter's clues in hand, she realized the bench might be the first step on this unexpected journey. Her heart pounded with a strange hope. Perhaps this was James's way of saying goodbye, but also of guiding her toward healing. Without hesitation, Alice wrapped herself in a warm coat and stepped outside. The mist still clung to the rolling hills as she made her way to the bench by the lake. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. She found the bench exactly where she remembered, worn but sturdy. Underneath, hidden in a small crevice, was the wooden box. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it carefully. The lock was intricate, but not impossible. Using a hairpin she found in her coat pocket, she managed to unlock it. Inside lay a folded map, old and faded, marked with strange symbols and handwritten notes in James's familiar script. Alice unfolded the map slowly, tracing the path with her finger. It led deeper into the wilds of the Lake District, through forests and over hills she had never dared to explore. A wave of fear washed over her, but she pushed it aside. This was more than a treasure hunt, it was a message from the man she loved, a chance to uncover the truth behind the life they had shared. She returned home, clutching the map tightly. That evening, she began to research the landmarks and notes, piecing together the puzzle James had left behind. The night grew late, but her resolve did not waver. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face whatever lay beyond the horizon. The next morning, Alice woke with a restless mind. The map lay spread on the dining table, its faded lines and mysterious symbols demanding her full attention. Each marking hinted at places she had walked past countless times but never truly noticed: the old stone bridge, the abandoned mill, the twisted oak tree near the river. With a sense of purpose, she prepared for the day's journey. She packed a small backpack with essentials, a bottle of water, a notebook, a camera, and the letter from James. Her fingers lingered over the worn edges of the letter as if drawing strength from the words penned in a time before the silence. The sky was a pale grey as Alice set off toward the stone bridge. The air smelled of damp moss and wildflowers. As she approached, she noticed something she had never seen before, a small carving on one of the stones, almost hidden by ivy. It was a symbol from the map. Her heart quickened. The carving depicted a compass rose, carefully etched into the weathered rock. Nearby, tucked under a loose stone, was a tiny, rusted key. Alice felt a surge of excitement and fear. This was the first tangible sign that she was on the right path. She examined the key closely. It looked ancient, but sturdy enough to fit a lock. What lock, she wondered. She knew she had to keep moving forward. Following the map, she made her way to the abandoned mill. The building stood silent and crumbling, surrounded by tall grass swaying in the breeze. Inside, shafts of light pierced the dusty air, revealing forgotten machinery covered in rust. Alice's eyes searched for anything resembling the next clue. She spotted a faded inscription carved into a wooden beam, words in James's handwriting, "Trust your heart, for it knows the way." A chill ran down her spine. The message was simple but powerful. She took out her notebook and carefully copied the phrase, determined to remember it. Before leaving the mill, Alice found a small, locked box hidden behind a loose panel in the wall. The key she had found at the bridge fit perfectly. With a click, the box opened, revealing a folded piece of parchment inside. The parchment was old, the ink faded but still legible. It contained a poem, an enigmatic riddle that spoke of a place where the sun meets the water, where shadows dance at dusk. Alice folded the parchment carefully, her mind racing to decipher the meaning. Was it a location, a time, or something else entirely? As she stepped out of the mill, the sun began to break through the clouds, casting golden light across the landscape. The Lake District seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for her next move. Alice felt a deepening connection to James with every step she took. This journey was becoming more than a search for a hidden treasure. It was a path to understanding, healing, and perhaps a new beginning. The day stretched slowly as Alice prepared to follow the riddle from the poem. She pondered its words, "Where the sun meets the water, where shadows dance at dusk." The phrase echoed in her mind like a whisper carried on the wind. Her first thought was the shore of Windermere, the largest lake in the Lake District. She had visited it before, but never with a purpose such as this. The afternoon light was beginning to soften as she drove toward the water's edge, anticipation building with every mile. Upon arrival, Alice stepped onto the pebbled shore. The surface of the lake mirrored the sky, calm and still. She walked slowly, scanning the horizon where the sun began its slow descent. The poem's words felt alive here, the meeting of sun and water, the shadows lengthening as the day faded. Near a cluster of reeds, she noticed an old wooden boat, half hidden and tethered to a rotting post. Something about it called to her. Inside the boat's worn hull, she found another small envelope. Her heart beat faster as she carefully opened it. This note was different, no riddles, no puzzles. It was a letter addressed to her, written by James in the weeks before he died. "My dearest Alice," it began. "If you are reading this, it means you have found the first steps of my secret. I hope this journey brings you peace and understanding, even as it challenges you. Remember, the greatest treasures are not gold or jewels but the moments we shared and the love that remains. I am with you, always." Tears welled in Alice's eyes. For the first time since James's death, she felt a warmth spreading through her chest. The path ahead was still uncertain, but this message was a beacon in the darkness. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her coat. As dusk settled, the shadows around her seemed to dance softly on the water. Alice whispered a quiet thank you to James, feeling his presence beside her. With renewed strength, she vowed to continue the quest, ready to face whatever secrets the Lake District still held. The following morning, Alice awoke with the letter still clutched in her hand. Its words echoed softly in her mind, fueling her determination. She had now a tangible link to James, a connection that transcended the grief and silence of the past weeks. The riddle from the poem weighed heavily on her thoughts. Where the sun meets the water, where shadows dance at dusk. Could it mean more than just the lake shore? She decided to explore the nearby valley, known for its rolling hills and ancient woodlands. The area was said to be rich with history and secrets whispered by the wind. As she drove through winding country roads, the landscape unfolded like a painting, golden fields, dense green forests, and distant mountains veiled in mist. The air was fresh, carrying a hint of wild thyme and pine. Arriving at the valley's edge, Alice parked and set off on foot, following a narrow path that meandered alongside a gentle stream. Birds sang their morning songs, and sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. After walking for nearly an hour, she reached a clearing where the stream widened into a small pool. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the sky and surrounding trees like a mirror. It was a place of calm and beauty, yet it seemed to hold an air of mystery. Near the water's edge, Alice noticed a weathered stone, half buried in moss. Upon closer inspection, she found an inscription carved into its surface, words in Latin, veritas in vento, meaning, truth in the wind. Alice's heart quickened. Could this be another clue? She sat by the stone, closing her eyes to listen. The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying a soft murmur. It was as if the valley itself was trying to speak. She took out her notebook and wrote down the Latin phrase. Something about it felt like a key to unlocking the next part of James's message. Suddenly, a faint rustling came from the bushes behind her. Startled, Alice turned to see an elderly man stepping into the clearing. His eyes were kind but piercing, and he carried a walking stick adorned with carvings. "You're following the path of James," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. Not many have the courage to seek what lies hidden beneath the surface. Alice nodded, curiosity mingled with caution. "Do you know where this path leads?" The man smiled enigmatically. "That depends on what you are willing to discover, and what you are prepared to leave behind." With those words, he extended his hand, offering a small, leather-bound book. "Take this. It may guide you when the wind falls silent." Alice accepted the gift, feeling the weight of its significance. The journey was far from over, and now more than ever, she understood that the answers she sought were intertwined with her own courage and willingness to trust the unseen. Alice studied the leather-bound book late into the night. Inside were delicate sketches, old inked writings, and a symbol she recognized from a ring James used to wear, a crest shaped like an oak tree with roots entangled in a circle. Beneath the crest were initials, HGR. Turning page after page, she discovered faded entries, diary-like notes, observations of locations, and coded messages in James's handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she reached one entry dated just a month before his death. It read, "The manor holds more than just walls." She must see it with her own eyes. "I've left the truth in the one room she feared the most." Alice's breath caught. The manor could only mean the long-abandoned Harrington family estate, nestled deep within the fells north of Ambleside. She had visited it once with James, early in their relationship, and remembered how unsettling it had felt, the heavy silence, the distant creaks in the halls. James told her it had belonged to his grandfather, a man surrounded by rumors of secrets and loss. The next morning, fog blanketed the valleys as Alice drove north. The air grew colder as she ascended toward the fells, the road narrowing and winding through ancient stone walls and wild hedgerows. Finally, the gates of the Harrington estate appeared, rusted and overgrown with ivy. She pushed them open with effort and walked down the path, her boots crunching on gravel long untrodden. The manor loomed before her, Gothic, stern, and forgotten by time. Windows stood dark, and ivy clawed up its walls like green veins. The front door creaked open reluctantly. Dust swirled in the entryway, and the scent of wood rot lingered in the air. Alice stepped inside, heart pounding, guided by memory. She passed the grand staircase and entered the library, where James once told her, "If ever you feel lost, this house will point you back to me." In the far corner, hidden behind towering shelves, was a narrow door, one she had refused to enter all those years ago. James had called it the room of quiet, where his grandfather used to lock away his journals and maps. Alice hesitated only a second before turning the handle. Inside, the room was smaller than she remembered, lined with shelves of dust-laden books and a writing desk at its center. But what truly caught her eye was a box on the desk, carved with the same oak crest as in the book. She opened it slowly. Inside were stacks of letters, written by James to her, never posted. Dozens of them, each dated, some joyful, others apologetic, confessional. In one, he admitted, "I feared I was dying long before I told you. I wanted to shield you from the pain of it. But the truth is, every moment I kept from you only widened the gap between us. This journey you're on, it's what I couldn't give you while I was alive, understanding." Tears streamed down Alice's cheeks as she read. These were his unspoken truths, hidden away in the shadows of the manor, waiting for her to be ready. And then, nestled beneath the letters, she found something else, a sealed envelope, labeled with her full name. Inside, a single page bore a signature not from James, but from a legal advisor. It was a codicil, a final amendment to James's will, signed and witnessed, dated the day before his death. It stated, in clear legal language, all personal and ancestral property held in the Harrington name, including the manor, investments, and holdings, are to be passed solely to Alice Harrington upon my death. Alice froze. The solicitor had told her no such document existed. Someone had buried this intentionally. And now, with the codicil in her hand, the truth began to sharpen. There was more to uncover. This was only the beginning of the deception. But now she had proof, and the name at the bottom of the witness signature chilled her to her core, Gerald Whitcomb. James's oldest friend. And the man who had insisted there were no other documents. Alice returned to London the next day, the codicil kept safe in a folder clutched tightly under her arm. Her steps were heavier now, not with grief, but with a resolve steeled by betrayal. The betrayal of a man she had trusted. Gerald Whitcomb had been at their wedding. He had given a speech, toasted their happiness. And he had looked her in the eyes at James's funeral and told her, he wanted peace in the end. Nothing was left unsaid. She now knew how false those words were. Her first stop was at Harrington and Byrne, the law firm that had supposedly handled James's will. The receptionist hesitated when Alice asked to see the senior solicitor, but a flash of the codicil changed everything. Minutes later, she sat across from a woman named Evelyn Breyer, sharp-eyed and precise, her suit neatly pressed, her voice clipped with concern. "You're saying this codicil was never submitted?" Alice asked, her tone calm but tight. Evelyn examined the paper for a long while, adjusting her glasses. This changes the entire distribution of your late husband's estate. If genuine, it overrides all prior instructions. It is genuine. That's James's signature. And it's witnessed by Gerald Whitcomb. I want to know why this was hidden. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Gerald brought in the will the day after your husband's passing. He claimed there were no updates. He was acting as executor, but if this is accurate, his role becomes very questionable indeed. Alice clenched her fists. I want everything he's done re-evaluated. Every document he submitted. Every signature he offered. If he forged or omitted anything. We'll launch a formal investigation immediately, Evelyn interrupted. And I would advise involving the police. This, Mrs. Harrington, is very serious. As Alice left the office, she barely noticed the rain falling outside. Her thoughts were a storm of their own. She dialed Detective Louise Grant, the only officer who had shown her kindness during the chaotic weeks after James's death. After a brief exchange, a meeting was set for that evening at a quiet cafe near Blackfriars. Louise listened without interrupting as Alice laid out everything, the codicil, the manor, the buried letters, and most of all, Gerald's name scrawled as witness. He was the executor, Alice concluded. He had access to every legal paper, every file James left behind. And he handed over a version of the will that excluded me entirely. Louise folded her hands slowly, expression unreadable. It's rare, Alice. But it's not unheard of. Greed can corrupt even the closest friend. If he knew what James truly intended and kept that from you, he committed fraud. And possibly more, Alice said. Because James's death, it was sudden. And Gerald was the one who found him. Louise's gaze sharpened. Do you suspect foul play? Alice hesitated, but then she nodded. I didn't, not at first. But now? It's all too clean. James was on heart medication, yes, but he was stable. That night he died, Gerald stayed over. James never told me why. Louise took out her notebook. All right. I'll dig. Quietly. You keep that codicil safe, and don't let him suspect you know. That night, Alice couldn't sleep. She paced the flat, rereading James's letters, tracing the curvature of his handwriting, hearing his voice in her head. She tried to convince herself Gerald was merely greedy, not murderous. But deep down, she felt it, something was wrong from the very beginning. The next morning, she received a call from Evelyn Breyer. Her voice was grave. Mrs. Harrington, we've begun cross-referencing Gerald's documents. The witness signature on the original will, it doesn't match his verified signature from prior legal filings. And the notary, he no longer exists. Alice's knees buckled slightly. You mean, he forged it? At this point, it appears so. But there's something more alarming. Gerald had submitted a financial record showing a transfer from the estate into an offshore account, 3 days after James died. How much? Nearly £400,000. Alice felt the world narrow around her. She had been grieving, broken, while Gerald siphoned away her husband's legacy. I want him arrested, she said through clenched teeth. That decision will lie with the police. But with the codicil in your possession, you now have leverage. We'll support you in reclaiming your rightful inheritance. Just as Alice ended the call, her phone buzzed again. A message. No name, just a number. Meet me where the truth began. Come alone. Midnight. You deserve to know everything. She stared at the message, her pulse quickening. The truth began, at the manor. The wind howled through the broken trees as Alice pulled up the gravel path of Alderwood House. The manor stood silhouetted against a heavy moon, the shutters rattling like loose bones. Midnight had come, and with it, the weight of every unanswered question. She stepped out of the car, the codicil tucked into the inside of her coat, a torch in one hand. No lights glowed from the manor. Silence reigned, but not the kind that comforted, it pressed against her, thick with secrets. The message had been unsigned. She didn't know who was waiting. Yet, something deeper than logic, something closer to instinct, had drawn her here. She approached the front doors, pushing them open. The hinges groaned in protest. Dust motes danced in the beam of her torch. The grand staircase loomed ahead. It was the same as the last time she'd been here, only now the house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by truths long buried. A voice echoed from the drawing room. Soft. Familiar. You came. Alice turned sharply, her torch swinging. Gerald Whitcomb stepped into the light. His hair was messier than usual, and there was something disheveled in the way he moved, as if the lies had finally begun to weigh him down. Why? Alice asked coldly. Why here? Gerald gave a tired smile. Because it ends here. She held her ground. Did you write the message? He nodded. I needed to see you. One last time. You could have seen me when James died. You could have told the truth. Gerald's eyes dropped. I couldn't. I was already in too deep. Alice took a step forward. You stole from me. From him. You altered his will. You left me with nothing while you lined your pockets. I didn't plan it, he said quickly. At first, I thought it was what James wanted. He'd left it so vague, and the codicil, it wasn't filed. I thought maybe he'd changed his mind. You knew he hadn't, she snapped. You were there when he wrote that codicil. Your name is on it. Gerald's face contorted. He was going to cut me off. Did you know that? After everything I'd done for him, he said I had interfered too much. He was going to name Evelyn Breyer as executor instead. He trusted her. So you made sure he wouldn't, Alice whispered. Gerald paused. It was the first moment he didn't deny. Alice felt a chill crawl up her spine. You were with him the night he died. What did you do, Gerald? I didn't mean for him to die, he muttered. He took his pills with whiskey. I didn't stop him. I didn't call anyone. I just let it happen. Alice's stomach turned. You let him die. He stepped forward, desperation creeping into his voice. I panicked. I knew about the codicil. I hid it. Burned the envelope. Told everyone it didn't exist. I thought I could fix it later. Make it up to you somehow. But you were too strong. Too clever. Too clever to fall for a liar, she spat. Gerald looked away, his shoulders sagging. I'm done. I've told the truth. Do what you have to. A sound interrupted the tense stillness. Footsteps. Another torchlight. Detective Louise Grant emerged from the hallway behind them, hand on her sidearm. I heard enough, she said firmly. Gerald Whitcomb, you're under arrest for fraud, obstruction of justice, and withholding legal documents. Gerald didn't resist as the cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. He merely glanced at Alice one final time. I really did love him, you know, he murmured. In my own way. Alice's voice was steady. Then you should have protected what he loved most. As the police car took Gerald away, the weight on Alice's chest finally began to lift. The manor behind her remained dark and silent, but it no longer held the same power over her. The truth had come out. A week later, at the High Court in London, the codicil was officially recognised. Alice Harrington was reinstated as the rightful heir and widow of James Harrington. The estate, the funds, and Alderwood house, all returned to her name. But more than that, she had reclaimed something deeper. Her dignity. Her voice. Her peace. Standing at James's grave days later, Alice knelt and placed a white rose. I kept my promise, James, she whispered. The truth is free now. And in that quiet garden under the Cotswolds sky, there was, at last, peace.